This is the Turtle Dojo, a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles podcast with your hosts, Adam and Chris.
Welcome to a very special episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Adam, and with me is my co-host, Chris. As always, Chris, how's it going?
Doing great, Adam. Happy to be joining you here once again this evening. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well. We have the reason why I said it's a special episode of the podcast is because this particular episode serves as both a episode of I Have the Power, a He-Man podcast, and a Turtle Dojo episode, which obviously chronicles the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That is very important. The reason why there's a crossover is because there's a lot of very important happenings in both franchises right now. And we haven't talked about the news since any of it dropped, so I figured why not do a news dump episode and share our thoughts on all of it, and we'll make it a big mashup crossover episode, and we'll just go from there. So that's what we're going to do today. No reviews of any kind today because we had one scheduled, but I didn't have time to reread the thing. It's on me. I had family obligations, so we'll push that to the next episode. But in case you want to sort of, while I have it on the brain, if our viewers and listeners want to read along with our next review, we are going to be doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin, The Lost Years. So if you'd like to follow along, you have about a month or so to read that book and then be all ready to go when we bring that episode to you. So on to the news, and since I just mentioned the comic, let's start with the comic book realm, shall we, Chris? So there is, in terms of Masters of the Universe, just to remind people, there is currently a prequel 4-issue series to Masters of the Universe Revolution. The comic is also titled Masters of the Universe Revolution. And what it is remember the part of the series that sort of hinted at Hordak and Skeletor's first encounter, and there was a couple of flashbacks? Well, this whole comic is going to be fleshing out that partnership, that first meeting, the partnership, and how it developed, and I guess maybe how it all unraveled. We'll have to see how it plays out. But it's written by Tim Sheridan, who's one of the writers on a couple of episodes of both seasons, as well as Rob David, who is an architect of the Revelation series, like a producer of all things Motu for Mattel. So I love that aspect of the animated series. I was very intrigued by it. So I'm certainly looking forward to delving in more deeply into that part of the story. And I talked to Tim Sheridan for the Green Lantern podcast that Donnie and I do, obviously about the Alan Scott Green Lantern book that he wrote. And I had sort of asked him off air if he knew anything about a potential season 3 of, the Revelation/Revolution series. He said they still hadn't heard yet. He said Netflix takes their time with these decisions. He said, but even if, worst case scenario, there isn't a third season, we will tell the stories that we plan to tell in comic book form.
Sweet.
So, notwithstanding any of that, what's your interest level in reading about Skeletor and Hordak's first encounter?
Yeah, I'm on board for this. I like most things set in the Masters of the Universe realm. It's just it's a place that I enjoy spending time and playing in. But two of the characters that I really enjoy out of that universe are Skeletor and Hordak. So seeing more of their relationship fleshed out and getting more background on that and having it stretched out over 4 issues. Is it 4 issues?
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds about right to tell that story. Yeah, I'm on board for that. I think, and like you said, it's got people that were involved with both seasons of the show, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm on board for this. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome. And of course, as we have done with Masters of the Universe, when it's finished and we've both read it, we'll review it. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. Um, let's jump to the other side of our Saturday morning fandom for a minute, and that would be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As you know, Chris, this year, and this will age both of us, this year marks the 40th anniversary of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I am the same age as my favorite four Ninja Turtles. And that is actually quite a scary proposition, but they don't look a day older than 15. I sadly look quite a bit older than 15. But anyway, to celebrate the 40th anniversary, IDW, which is the comic rights holder of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the licensee, I guess would be the proper terminology. Not only did they re-up their license with the Turtles, or for the Turtles, I should say, they are celebrating. They are in the process of relaunching the book, as I think we've discussed before on the show. But before they relaunch the book with a brand new #1, they are going to do a 40th anniversary comic book celebration, which is sort of an oversized, in terms of page count, comic that will chronicle new stories in various eras of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So we're going to get a story from the original comic universe, which was the Mirage Studios comic universe, and I believe, I know for a fact Kevin Eastman is doing one of the stories. I think Peter Laird is also involved in those early Mirage stories. That story that they're going to tell. There's also going to be stories from the continuity of when the Turtles were at Image Comics. Remember, at one time they were at Image, and so there's going to be a story told from that universe. There's also going to be another news story from the current continuity from the IDW comics. And they're going to also dabble in the animated history of the TMNT. They're going to tell a new story in the classic cartoon, the '80s one, which we love and has its own series in comic book form. They're going to tell a story or two from the 2003 animated series universe, the 2012 animated series universe, and the most recent, the rise of the TMNT, which was I think it was at Netflix for a time. They had that animated series, and then the new animated movie universe that we just saw this past summer. So there's a lot of new stories in various eras of the Turtles' histories. What do you think about that in terms of a comic and a way to celebrate the Turtles?
Oh man, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There have been so many iterations of the Turtles throughout the 40 years that the franchise has been in existence, and each of those different iterations has their own little quirks and their own feel to them, and
Right.
and I think it's a great idea to it's a great way to celebrate the history of these guys. I wasn't introduced to them with the original comics, of course. I was a little young for that, but of course with the '80s cartoon series and the toys, that's how I caught on. So it sounds like there's going to be something for every level of fan in this one shot, and they're going to be really good creative teams, I think, involved with it too. And anytime you can bring back Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. I think it's a good thing. So I'll be looking forward to this one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and that I believe hits in July because final cutoff order is tomorrow. If you want to pre-order from your comic book store, so that means that it will be out in July. I think it's the beginning of July, and then at the end of July, the last week or so, they're going to release the new #1. So the two complement each other quite nicely. Um, the so we've dabbled in Masters of the Universe comic news. We've dabbled in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic news, and now I've got a news item set in both universes because remember back, I think when the Masters of the Universe license was still at DC, there was concept art for a crossover featuring Masters of the Universe and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but the licensing agreement with DC expired. They didn't renew, and therefore we never got that crossover. Remember I don't know if you vaguely recall those images. I think they were black and white, but they were out there online. We never got the crossover, as I said. But now, with Masters of the Universe being back at Dark Horse, in September we are getting the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Masters of the Universe crossover. It's going to be written by Turtles of Grayskull is the name. It's a 4-issue miniseries. It is written by Tim Seeley, who is a frequent Masters of the Universe comic book writer, and it is drawn by Freddie Williams II, who has drawn a lot of crossovers for both the Turtles and the Masters of the Universe, but never together. But now he's going to do them together. For reference, Freddie Williams II drew the Masters of the Universe and Thundercats crossover that was at DC. He drew the Turtles Batman crossover or crossovers at DC because there was multiple volumes. So this is a very impressive creative team they're putting together. With a creative team with sort of, and also Tim Seeley's worked in the DC universe as well, so with Nightwing, so he's more than just the horror guy, comic guy, because he's the co-creator of Hack and Slash, so that's his his thing. But he's done a lot in both regular superhero fare. So I think it's an impressive duo to put on the book, but also, I mean, these two sets of characters and their universes are like icons of 80s, childhoods, and it's a mystery that it's taken till 2024 for them to finally sort of cross over. But we're finally getting it. How excited are you for this crossover?
Oh, this is going to be great. Like you said, Tim Seeley and Freddie Williams II, that's a dynamite duo right there. And I've enjoyed the crossovers that we've gotten from these properties before, You mentioned the He-Man and Thundercats crossover, which I was a really big fan of that series. That was really good. Mm-hmm. Anytime the Turtles crossover, like with Batman and Ninja Turtles, that was awesome. That was a lot of fun. And there are two properties that, like you said, it seems it's strange that it's taken this long to put them together. Well, you mentioned that there was something in the works before, but that couldn't be finished in time for the rights before the rights expired or whatever. But we're kind of living right now in a golden age of these types of crossovers that were started a few years ago, and now we're reaping the benefits of it because we're not only getting these crossovers, but we're getting superstar creative teams working on them. Right. So it's not like something that's kind of like, oh, let's throw the fans a bone here. Like, no, they're putting together a 4-issue miniseries that they're expecting to sell big bucks. and so I think the way they're going about it is great, and I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely, I agree. I'm so looking forward to it. When I first read the announcement, I was so excited. Just because, like I said, it's one of those ones that you as a kid growing up, and you dream of it, and even though like I'm going to be buying this probably digitally just because I've made a decision as a collector and not living in Wayne Manor that that so I don't have X amount of space. My physical collecting is reserved for Batman and Superman, the main Batman and Superman books, but digitally I'm definitely going to be buying these day one, which is great because like what you can do on Kindle/Prime is you can pre-order it, let's say from now, and then the day that it releases, I get an email saying, "Hey, your book's ready to read." So it's like Christmas morning when that email arrives. So I'm looking forward to that notification already, even though it's going to be until September until I get that notification. But I digress. But I'm very excited for this crossover,
And the solicitation for it mentions Krang and Shredder and Skeletor.
all the heavy hitters. Yeah,
we're getting like the main players. This isn't going to be like telling some tale with like obscure characters that you're not familiar with.
Oh yeah, the big boys are coming out to play for this.
Yeah,
and that's what you want. Like this to me, when I read the solicitation and I see which characters are involved, it is really with obviously a lot of skill because the writer and artist are very skilled. But what it feels like when you read something like that is when you were a kid, you got your toys, and you mixed and matched franchises, and you smash them together, and you let them fight, and you let them team up, and that was the fun of it. And now we're getting creative people that can actually tell an actual story around that mashup, scenario that you created in your head all those years ago, and you're going to get to see it play out. So I just think that's a blast. The next step to be really greedy for a second would be for the actual media conglomerates that own both of these properties, not only to team them up in comic books, but also to like if let's say this sells really well, which I don't doubt that it will. How about creating an animated movie? I don't know. Like that's I'm not asking for a live action one because that would be near impossible, but
I mean, they did it with Batman and Ninja Turtles, and I think that got pretty well. That was pretty well received. I know I liked it a lot.
I'm still waiting for the sequel to that, but instead we're getting Batman Ninja. I don't understand that, but that's another plot. That's another podcast where I could complain about that, but I digress. But so I mean, that would be a pie in the sky dream. But for now, I'll happily, not ask for too much and take the comic and hopefully I enjoy it, which again I assume that I will. But as we've done with every other comic, when this one comes out and we've read it, guess what? We're gonna have an episode reviewing it. So
yeah, for sure.
Stay tuned and get excited for that because we're gonna have coverage of it here.
I'm really bummed because at first I thought that I'd seen a release date of like July for this series, but then looking it back up in preparation for this show, I see that it's September.
It's September, so you gotta wait a little bit. Yeah.
2 whole months longer than I thought I was gonna have to wait.
It's okay. We'll read the 40th anniversary celebration. That'll be like 80 pages, so it'll keep us busy while we're waiting. So we'll have something to hold us over. And by then, Comic-Con will be in the middle, so maybe we'll get some news about the 2 movies that we're going to talk about after the break. But that's it for the comic book portion of the news. So what Chris and I are going to do now is we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back on the other side and talk about movie news for, shockingly, both properties. So we'll be back. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
What's up, everyone? It's the Emerald Enthusiast. For all of your multiverse viewing and listening needs, check out our shows, which include Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Power Rangers, the Marvel Universe, and the DC Universe, including the Emerald Echo podcast. You can check us out on Podbean, and remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. That's the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. From the first podcast to the last.
And we're back. And as promised, we have movie news to discuss. And it's very exciting on both counts. So, Chris, let's start with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
We know that we are getting a sequel to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated film that came out this past summer. We know that there's in between that movie and its sequel, which I believe is dated in, I want to say 2026. There's going to be, in August, in fact, there's going to be an animated series that is a bridge between the two movies. You and I have often, when we've done a Ninja Turtles episode, kind of wondered, when are we going to get another live action film for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? We've even sort of gone. I remember there was a script by one of the guys that hosts one of the main players on Saturday Night Live. He's married to Scarlett Johansson. I can't remember his name. Yes, yeah. There was a script from him and his brother floating around that that was gonna be a live action thing. We heard about that, and then we never heard about anything regarding that again. And we were wondering, well, I guess we're going to have to wait for this live-action movie. Well, Paramount surprised everybody with a recent announcement that was, let me pull it up here, not too long ago, April 11th, in fact. We are getting a new live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, Chris. But it's not any live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. First of all, let me tell you some of the players that are involved. Producing the movie is former DC Studios producer Walter Hamada. I know a lot of people, there's a certain segment of people that don't like him. He did his best with the situation. I think that was a disaster. You know, the whole scenario pre-James Gunn was a mess. He put out some good movies, Blue Beetle, the first Shazam, Aquaman. He had some good hits in there. Prior to DC, he was a mainstay at New Line, and he produced the. I think he was a producer on the It movies. I believe The Conjuring. So he has a run of success, and he has an overall deal at Paramount now since leaving the DCEU. And so he's going to produce the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. They have a writer, Tyler Burton Smith, who co-wrote the upcoming action movie, and I don't know if this is out yet or not, Boy Kills World. I'm not familiar with it, but I don't have to be because they've hired this writer, and he actually wrote the 2019 iteration of the Chucky franchise, actually.
Right.
That's the other thing he wrote. So he's writing, and the live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie in question is an R-rated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin live-action movie. Now, Chris, you and I have said on this very show, since we read the first volume, remember, both of us said, man, we know they'll never do it because they'll never release an R-rated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, but wouldn't it be awesome if they gave us a Last Ronin movie or a series on Netflix or something? And we were both pie in the sky dreaming, yeah, that would be great, that'd be fantastic. You know, they could have their animated stuff for the kids, the Last Ronin thing for the adults. Everybody, it's a win-win for everybody. But we both kind of, we're dreaming, and it's never going to happen. Well, looks like it's happening, and I couldn't be happy about this, Chris. I don't know about you, but if I could buy my ticket now for an IMAX screening, I'd buy my ticket now. How are you feeling about this?
Oh, this is a day one viewing for me.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
question about it. It's one that I'll be there, sitting there, giddy like a little schoolboy, probably with a big smile on my face, watching this movie. If they give us what I'm expecting them to give us, with it being an R-rated film. They know who their audience is in this property, and they're gonna market it towards. They're gonna build this movie and market it towards the adult viewers who have been fans of the Turtles for the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. You know,
yeah,
this movie is made for the adult, from what I've read so far. We don't know too many details about it yet.
yeah.
But yeah, man, I like it's one that I hope they stick to the letter of the comic book series
Yeah.
and how brutal it really is.
Right.
There's so much that there's so much depth to the character in that series, and
Yeah.
not only in the present day story that it tells, but also in the flashbacks as well. So yeah, man, this sounds like something that I'm 100% on board with. I'll be there at least once in the theater, if not more.
I remember when the news came. Right, when I read the news, I was legit just sitting there for 10 minutes, trying to. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I had to double check the calendar to make sure that I didn't fall for some stupid April Fools, because on April Fools they do all this kind of movie news and it ends up being BS. I checked the date and I'm like, okay, April 11th. So we're past. Like, nobody's going to try and pull a prank at this point. And yeah, it's just. I think this is the smartest thing in the world. Because I saw a lot of, not a lot, but on social media, some people are like, well, how are they gonna sell this as an R-rated? It's gonna be a tough sell. And it's like, because your parents are gonna want to take their kid and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, the movie marketing. That's the job of the movie marketing. Also, it's not on the movie to determine whether a child should be in the theater for this. That's parenting, right? That's a parent's job. I mean, if a parent decides to take their kid to an R-rated movie, I've seen it happen. There were kids in Deadpool.
Yeah,
I kind of wins personally. I'm like, I don't know if you should bring, but hey, listen. I saw kids in Watchmen, which was a scary proposition because you know what you see early on in Watchmen, and it's big and blue and not for kids. But look, it's up to the parent at that point.
yeah, and in a world where you mentioned Deadpool, where you have two Deadpool movies making like $700 million,
Yeah.
and you have an R-rated Joker movie making $1 billion. Like, it's not outlandish to think that you can put out an R-rated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie properly marketed,
Yeah.
and make a big return on your investment.
Now, Chris, here's my question to you. I think I know what you're going to answer it with, but how should they approach the turtles in this movie in terms of bringing it and them to the screen?
Okay, are you talking about like the identity of the turtle?
No, not the identity, but in terms of the design, like, do you want them to go back to the 90s and have
Yeah.
the
I want
suits
as close.
or CGI or a mix of both?
No, because I want as close to the '90s aesthetic as you can like pull off, like practically, But I think now with robotics and with advances in foam technology and like receptacles for like sending and receiving signals and stuff like that, I think you can shrink down and lessen the weight of the actual costume that the actor is physically wearing. And I mean, really, you're only talking about one actor having to wear it through the course of the shooting. You're not talking about 4 turtles at the same. Now, if they do the flashbacks, there might be other scenes.
I have a feeling they're going to do the flashbacks. I think it would be they're going to want to try and get the 4 turtles in there as often as the story allows.
Yeah, probably.
But even that, you can maybe, because my thought process was, okay, you do the one that's going to be constantly moving around and the martial arts and all that jazz in sort of a one, the classic way. And then you can have like a hybrid of CGI and practical for the other 4.
Yeah, depending on how you're planning on showing the other 4, it could be a situation where they don't all have to be the same, like you're mentioning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like we've seen the CGI turtles in 2 movies that the Michael Bay movies, obviously.
Right, yeah.
And while those have their place, and I still do enjoy both of them.
Agreed.
That aesthetic from the original 1990s film is my favorite, and I would like to be as close as possible to that. And I mean, heck, make it as close as it can be, and consider this like a spiritual sequel to that film.
That was going to be my next question, because
in that universe,
like legally, I don't think they can set it in that universe because technically New Line produced that movie. So
okay.
I'm not a movie lawyer, like I'm not an entertainment lawyer. I don't know the specifics. I'm assuming you'd have to get some sort of sign off and monetary compensation to use that continuity. Like I know all 4 previous movies are on, or all 3, sorry, the 3 previous 90s movies are on Paramount Plus or whatever. Like you can find them there. But I think that's a different deal than, okay, now we're going to set it in that universe and say the events of at least 2 of those films were continuity. Like if you were going to get really specific and want to show footage as flashback material, I think there'd have to be some monetary exchange going the other way.
Yeah, and you're bringing up a good point. It would really only work as a sequel to the first film, because the second one and the third one take things to kind of a sillier place. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the second one you can kind of finagle it, but the third one is out. Like the third one is gone.
Yeah, I just now that we're talking about it, I don't know that an R-rated film can be built on the bones of that universe. It's still my obviously my favorite cinematic Turtles film is still the 1990 original. So as close as you can get to that as possible, like the better, in my opinion.
At least from a visual standpoint, that would be good. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. But yeah, I agree with you in terms of the look of the turtle. So this is all very exciting. Do you think there's any way that they could potentially? Here's what I would do as a nice nod to the 90s original. Bring back the actress that played April to play April again.
Judith Hoag?
Sure, yeah. I mean, April is older in this universe anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, could they do that without overtly referencing the original, like specifically? I would think so.
There's such a time gap before the last Ronin series that you might be able to pull it off that way. Because you can explain that it's been 30 years since the events of that first film.
Right.
Or even if you don't explain it, I mean, if you just if people know this is set in a dystopian sort of future, then you can kind of work your way around it, I think. But yeah, if you could get her, and that's probably a meaty role to play. This isn't like the bubbly show up on your TV and report the news.
Absolutely, yeah.
Role.
It's very different, and I think she would would absolutely love the opportunity because she's done reunion sort of appearances, and she seems to have fond memories of being April, right? So, I mean, and hey, what actor doesn't like working, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I find it hard to believe that she would pick up the phone and say, "Oh, Turtles? No, I'm not going back there." I don't think that would be part of the conversation. So I would certainly welcome her casting. Again, who knows if any of that is going to come out, or like we don't know what the look is going to look like, how they're going to go with the look. We have our want. Whether that happens, we'll see. Um, we made the casting suggestion. Don't know if that's going to happen. I'm just happy that this movie is in development and seemingly on its way to us. Um, so we will keep you, of course, informed the minute any other um, new news item regarding this movie drops, because we're going to be all over it here at on this podcast network. That's for sure. Now, another movie franchise that has been even longer in the waiting stages since the last live action Turtles movie is Masters of the Universe. Now, Chris, the last we heard was that we got confirmation that Travis Knight from Bumblebee fame and Kubo and the Last Strings, the animated movie fame, was actually signed on to direct. So his deal is 100% signed, sealed, delivered. He's the director. Now the question became, okay, who's playing He-Man? Because remember, in the last iteration of this movie's development, we had Kyle Allen in the title role of Prince Adam He-Man. Well, those previous directors bowed out, and with them went Kyle Allen. Because usually what happens is when a new director comes on to a project, unless they're contractually obliged to keep an actor, like in the case of the MCU or some DCU appearance, films, if most directors, if they had their choice, would want to cast the lead that they want for their own movie. So that is apparently exactly what Travis Knight has done, because we have our first actor joining the Masters of the Universe production, and that is, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correct, Nicholas Galzine will play Prince Adam / He-Man. For reference, Nicholas was last in, let me see here, a movie called The Idea of You. It was a rom-com with Anne Hathaway. And he was also in I believe, a remake of Cinderella that had singer Camila Cabello in the role of Cinderella. So he's been in a couple of things. What's your take on the casting?
Well, I'm not familiar with this guy's previous work. Like you said, they both, from what I have read about him, he's done work mostly in the rom-com realm.
Mm-hmm.
That's not really a big area of films that I'm searching out.
Sure.
I'm single. I don't watch a lot of rom-coms by myself in my house.
Makes sense, yeah.
I mean, you slap some light hair on the guy, and he looks like he might have the look. I'm every piece of news that we get about this that's like something that's concrete, like signing a director, signing an actor to play He-Man. It's just another step forward in my mind, and we've waited so long to get He-Man back on in live action, and The last project in Netflix, it kept getting dragged along and dragged along and dragged along until finally they scrapped the whole thing, and now Amazon is starting basically from scratch. But every bit of news that I hear about it is a positive. They're moving in the right direction. So director, good. Cast or cast the main role, good. So hopefully we have more bits and pieces of news trickling out about this as time goes on, because I really want this to be good, and I want, like, this is a project that even the problems that I had that most people have with the original film from the 80s, it's still one of my favorite pieces of nostalgia and history. So who knows, maybe my son will have that same reaction to this iteration of He-Man, the same reaction that I had in the 80s.
So I agree with you. I'm not a rom-com consumer. It's not my IP or genre, I should say, of choice. And I've already heard, because internet's going to internet and social media is going to social media, the obvious two complaints that you would hear with the He-Man casting, regardless of who it's been, whether it's been Kyle Allen or now Nicholas Galzine, is, well, he's dark-haired, and he's not physically built like The Rock, so how can he play He-Man? Again, let me remind social media folks that are in the Masters of the Universe fan space, there's this fantastic thing. It's called hair dye. It works wonders. You put in your hair, you let it sit for, I don't know, half an hour, an hour. I don't dye my hair often, so I don't know. But you let it sit for a certain period of time. You wash your hair, and then poof, your hair is the color of whatever bottle of hair dye you've purchased. So Nicholas Galzine can very easily become a blonde. And in fact, he's already blonde. He's already dyed his hair. There are pictures of him recently with blonde hair. And it looks very Prince Adam to me. In terms of not being the size of The Rock, there are gyms. These actors are given personal trainers when they start these kinds of films. I mean, look at the cast of Superman. Go to their Instagram. Every other day they're posting a workout video. So, I mean, it's. I'm sure the movie's not coming out till 2026. They've got a lot. They've got a lot of time to get them to bulk up. Also, because look, if you look at He-Man with the way he's drawn in animation or in comic books, that physique is almost, let's be honest, virtually unrealistic to attain. Do you think that, well, this is my question to you, Chris, do you think they will, of course they're going to get him to work out, but do you think they will just, the max size that he can get, will go with that? Or do you think there will be some enhancements with CGI so that, in effect, what I'm thinking of is sort of the reverse of what they did to Chris Evans in Captain America: The First Avenger?
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's possible for sure. So, he's playing two roles, obviously. You have Prince Adam, and then you have He-Man. Yeah. Assuming that they're both going to be played by the same person, and you don't have a Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk.
Shazam situation either, yeah.
Yeah. So, and maybe you don't want him to be naturally too physically large, because you don't want him to have that sort of imposing stature as Prince Adam. Sure. Maybe you enhance it a little with He-Man, but we don't know what He-Man's going to be wearing. We don't know if he's going to have sleeves, or if it's going to be, the big, almost bare-chested barbarian with the straps coming over the shoulders and under the back under the arms. But I think that either way they decide to go with it, obviously he's going to be like bulking up. But if they decide to throw some enhancements in, certainly they have the technology to do that these days.
Yeah. And another thing that I was, again, this is just me spitballing now. So we've given you the official news, which is Nicholas Galzine is playing He-Man, and it's going to be directed by Travis Knight. There was a rumor about Skeletor, but it's coming from the worst possible sources imaginable. So I'm not even going to entertain it until it gets backed up by other people. Maybe I'll tell you off air, but I won't entertain it here just because I don't believe it from the source that it's coming from. But so now this is speculation. Usually, I was thinking, so he did this movie, The Idea of You, with MGM and Amazon, co-starring Anne Hathaway. So I started thinking, well, they've got to cast other roles. And then I'm like, he's worked with Anne Hathaway before. Now, I looked at Anne Hathaway's resume and I thought, well, there's two roles that I could see her kind of fitting into. Either the Sorceress,
yep,
or Evelyn. What do you think of either of my casting suggestions for that? I think she could pull off either one.
Yeah, I think she could too. She wouldn't be a fit for Tila, I don't think.
I think, yeah.
Tila probably needs to be younger, around the age of Prince Adam. They need to be more contemporaries.
Yeah.
But, throw some dark makeup on her and, play up her eyes a little bit. And I could see her looking sort of treacherous as Evelyn. But when you first mentioned her name, Sorceress was the role that sprang to mind first.
Right, yeah.
I think she could fill that role. I think she could inhabit that, very well.
And then I said, okay, well, in my mind, I've sort of picked up who I would think of either as Sorceress or Evelyn. Take your pick, whatever hypothetically the director would choose. Even if he would choose any of my suggestions, he probably won't. So I'm not. Believe me, I'm not going to be campaigning for this. It's not a be-all and end-all that Anne Hathaway has to be in the movie. You're not going to see me hashtagging 34,000 times a day. It's not going to happen. It's just a fanboy suggestion. So then I started thinking about another role, and I thought of Tila. And I'm like, well, Travis Knight is directing. Directors often reteam with actors they've worked with in the past. Travis Knight did Bumblebee. Bumblebee starred Haley Steinfeld. Haley Steinfeld has done an action role before in the sense of Kate Bishop, Hawkeye. Could he possibly turn to Haley Steinfeld for somebody like Tila, perhaps?
Do you think she has the stature to pull off that role? Because Tila is a warrior,
That's the thing that I kind of, yeah.
She needs to be someone who physically you think can hang with the men that she's battling against. Haley has that kind of lithe quickness to her, but I don't know if I would see her as being as teaming up with He-Man on the battlefield.
That was the thing that kind of gave me pause, but it was just an idea of,
as an actress she could pull it off, absolutely.
Yeah. Sure. Then it would be about, again, getting her in the gym and all that jazz and blah 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 blah, and but again, it's just a thought, an idea that I know a lot of directors tend to reteam with people they've worked with. So I was just kind of in my own head thinking about things, and that's what I sort of came up with. It wouldn't shock me if either were hired. It also wouldn't shock me if neither were hired. The other sort of interesting, thought that I had was, do you think they are going to is it going to be, because you mentioned he's going to play two roles. Ideally, we think that, given the mythology, but is there a possibility that he's He-Man for the entire movie? Because I want them to go the Prince Adam to He-Man transition. I want to see that play out. because we've never seen it in live action.
Right.
But there's also the possibility that they may go the other way, and that's I'm curious.
Gosh, I hope that we do see both roles because, as you mentioned, in the original live action film, He-Man is He-Man. There's no Prince Adam to that story.
Yeah.
But there's also no King Randor
Right.
and Queen Marlena. And I want those things out of this story.
Me too.
So, it depends on the story that they're telling, but I want, and I kind of, Travis Knight seems to be, and I'm basing this solely off what I know
Bumblebee, yeah.
on Bumblebee.
Yeah.
Someone who respects the source material,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hope that this story he's telling is a big Eternia spanning epic, and I hope
epic, yes.
the royal family of Eternia is part of that story.
Yeah, agreed. The other sort of final thing I want to try and address is, again, and partially I understand it. He-Man fans, Master of the Universe fans, they see this news. I've seen a lot of excitement, but I've also seen a lot of trepidation. It was like, well, I've been here before. They've announced the director, they've announced the He-Man, and I've been burned. And so I'm not going to get excited until I'm sitting in the theater with a popcorn bucket. Look, part of me gets that. But I have reason to believe that, knock on wood, cross my fingers, this is going to be the time. And I'll tell you why. First of all, one of the big cheeses at Mattel recently went to a convention where they talked to retailers, and those kind of industry people. And he went on video and said, we are delivering Masters of the Universe in a film and other media outside of toys a priority. This brand, this IP is a priority for us. Growing it, expanding it is a priority for us. So when one of the big cheeses comes out and says that publicly, I tend to think, okay, they're not pissing around anymore. So that's one reason I'm confident. The other reason is the new executive at Amazon MGM, the person that spearheaded the deal to get Masters of the Universe film over to Amazon from Netflix, right, is the woman who oversaw the development of Barbie for Warner Brothers before she came to Amazon MGM. Now, unless you're living under a rock, you know that Barbie made a crap ton of money for Mattel and Warner Brothers. I think she sees the value in Masters of the Universe. Whether she thinks it's going to make $1 billion or not, personally, I'd love it to. I don't think it will. I don't think it has to if it's budgeted properly. But I'm sure she sees, look, maybe this thing isn't going to make $1 billion, but we can get a franchise out of this, and it could make us some money. And so the fact that she went through all that trouble to make, remember we talked about they had to make a deal with not only Mattel, but they also had to presumably extend the live action rights so that if this is successful, Amazon and MGM can make a sequel. Because remember we talked about the rights at some point expiring in 2026. So it was contingent for them to move forward with this. It was contingent on extending the period of time that they would have to make a sequel, a potential sequel. So that had to happen. So that takes a lot of finagling. I don't think they would haphazardly do this to just say, well, okay, and now we're just going to let it languish in developmental hell. So that's reason number 2 that I'm confident. Reason number 3 is the director they've got on board, Travis Knight. This guy made arguably the best Transformers live action film we've seen. He gave us a look that was familiar to the traditional material, and he did it under budget, and it still looked as good as any other Transformers movie did. Movie studios love guys like that.
Absolutely.
So all those three factors have me pretty confident this time around, Chris. I mean, maybe it's the fact that I'm a Leaf fan and I haven't seen them win in my entire life, and I'm an eternal optimist. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But those three factors have me excited and hopeful. What's your read on the situation?
I would say, like I mentioned earlier, every bit of movement that I see on this project, I'm considering as a positive. But
Yes.
I'm still cautiously optimistic about it. We've been here before,
Mhm.
but I think Amazon MGM has a better eye for quality, whereas Netflix in the past maybe might be more concerned with quantity and putting out as many things as you can find and seeing what sticks to the wall when you throw it. But you're right. This time it has like a real director who has done something in the genre before, and it
Yeah.
was really good. So he is the reason for most of my positive outlook on
Yeah.
this. But I'm still cautiously optimistic. But hopefully every the next few episodes that we do of this podcast will be giving more details because we're learning even more and more about the film because it's moving in the right direction.
Agreed. Agreed. And like I said, the fact that Nicholas Galzine is already blonde tells me maybe we're further along with this thing than we thought. I mean, sure, it could be for a random photo shoot, but considering that he was just announced as E-Man, I don't know, that seems a little bit too much of a coincidence. So, okay, so let's close the show with this. Of the characters I mentioned, who do you think the next casting is going to be? Let's keep it positive and predict which character is going to get cast next.
I mean, if you're casting He-Man, you got to have a Skeletor to play opposite him, right?
That's what I thought.
So that would make the most sense in terms of building, I think, hype for this movie.
Right.
It would make me the most excited, I think.
Yeah. And do you think it's going to be a bigger name? Like, do you think they're going to go for a big name?
Well, it depends on how they, kind of go about doing Skeletor. Is it going to be the Frank Langella prosthetics that he's going to wear for the whole movie, or are they going to go with some kind of like mocap and CGI?
Yeah.
You could have a guy like, I don't know. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head who I would want to cast.
I've got a name. Now that you mentioned prosthetics, I've got a name.
Yeah?
Don't know if it'll be him. Don't know if he'll ever do it. And I know he's older, but still.
Doug Jones?
No, Ron Perlman.
Yeah. Even under prosthetics, though, it's Ron Perlman. He's still got that kind of like
Yeah.
build to him. Gosh, I want a Skeletor who is on the younger end and
that's true. Yeah.
who can wield his staff and go into a battle against He-Man.
Well, I have a feeling the internet's going to mention Henry Cavill just because that's what they mention him for everything. He's 1 minute he's Cyclops, the next minute he's Wolverine, the next minute he's this and that. So who knows? And they'll see him with a sword in Highlander and say, "See, look, he can play Skeletor." But I digress. I don't know who it's going to be, but I can't wait to find out. I'll tell you that much. So when there is more news on the Masters of the Universe movie, we will also bring that to you right here on this show. But the beautiful thing about in between shows is that you can always come and find us and chat with us about either the Turtles or He-Man and the Masters of the Universe on social media. So, Chris, how do they track you down?
Well, I'm on Twitter at Chris N. Harrelson. I am now on Threads at Harrelson81. And I'm on Facebook too. So if Adam posts about this in the Facebook group, drop a comment.
I certainly will. And You can find me at Adam_LeafFan on Twitter. You can also find that aforementioned group on Facebook. The link is in the description below. But remember that both He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are forever. From the first time we took our action figures and mashed them together in a crossover in our minds to the last. So long, everybody.